All right, 12 o'clock on your Tuesday afternoon now. Welcome in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave. Bill Gunner will be along in just a little bit as we'll continue to unpack things today from the Clemson game on Saturday that we didn't get a chance to get into yesterday and really start turning our attention to the offseason because that's where we're at as of right now. I guess I need to start off with apologies to Dave because I know it's the worst day of the year for you when things don't go South Carolina's way in the annual matchup with Clemson. How did you process what went down on Saturday?
I used my therapy benefits.
Okay.
And that has not helped at all. But
is that what the hole in the drywall in there is? You just getting mad after that pick six at the end?
No, that wasn't me. I don't throw things or get mad.
Okay, just saying. Now,
someone else.
Now, how does, because again, you work here, but I don't know who you interact with outside of here. How does losing to Clemson affect your day-to-day life?
Well, I'm not speaking to my son-in-law anymore. He's a Clemson fan.
Okay. Now, if Carolina wins, is he speaking to you?
Yeah, he just frowns and.
Okay. But you just avoid them altogether.
See what?
You just avoid them altogether now for the next 363 days.
Well, I mean, it's the grandchildren. I can't totally avoid him.
Yeah, never say never.
He's not bad.
Okay. Now, I mean, does he bring it up? Does he make it a point of conversation every time?
Every now and then, yeah. There's orange all over the house, and it's just.
By the way, it's really easy. When Carolina plays other teams in the SEC, some of them, it's harder to seek out their fans, in the stands when you're watching from above. Clemson's really easy, man. It looks like a bunch of traffic cones everywhere.
Traffic. Yeah, that's a good description.
We even had, and I don't know who these people were, there were two people in the press box on Saturday that kind of rolled in, I don't know, halftime or whatever, but they kind of because for those that don't know, the middle row in the middle of the press box is usually where NFL scouts sit. And most NFL scouts they don't stay the entire time. They're there to evaluate whatever player or players they're looking at, and they'll take their notes, and typically they'll leave before the game's over. So there ends up being a bunch of empty seats kind of in the middle. And that's where the Cheez-It Bowl rep got yelled at by Kent Reichert in whatever game that was a couple weeks ago for cheering when Brian Thomas Jr. got a sack. I think maybe in the Oklahoma game or something like that, Alabama game maybe, one of those, and he got asked politely yet firmly to leave because you're not supposed to do that there. And I was waiting because these two Clemson fans decked out head to toe in all orange were just sitting there, and every time Clemson made a play, I kept looking over all right, they're going to say something. They're going to cheer, or this lady's going to, scream with excitement, and they're going to be asked to leave. I'll give them credit. They minded their manners, but it was a weird optic to see.
Yeah, the biggest time I ever was in something like that, it was in the press box in South Carolina when Eric Kimry threw the fade.
Oh, you were there for that? Okay.
Yeah, I was there for that, and there was at least 4 or 5 people that just went, yeah, wow, and you're supposed to not do anything, just decorum and all that. Don't show favoritism. So they actually threw him out.
Yeah, and again, shout out to Kent Reichert because he tossed out that Cheez-It Bowl guy and his guest wife, whoever that was, pretty quickly. Because you'll hear audible gasps at times because when you see something crazy, you're like, oh my God. Like when Klubnik recovered his own fumble and ran in the touchdown, that was kind of collective. Oh my God, I can't believe that happened. But nobody's cheering for it. In fact, now that I think about it, 2 years ago, when last time Clemson played here, because the assistants, the coaches' booths are on either side of where the main media area is, and if you walk in off the elevator, to your left is where the Carolina coaches are in the box, closest to the scoreboard, and on the right, closest to the closed-in part of the stadium, is where the opposing team's coaches are. And 2 years ago, I forget what happened. It may have been a sack on Rattler, but there were 2 Clemson assistants that were kind of standing there for some reason. I don't know if they were going to the bathroom or what it was. They were watching the play, and I want to say somebody told me one of them was Dabo's sons. I can't remember. I can't remember his face, but I know Dabo's had multiple sons that have played on the team, and I'm assuming one of them is probably a GA now or assistant or something like that. But I think one of them also got yelled at because he cheered when they sacked Rattler or something 2 years ago.
Yeah, I've seen things like that. Another thing I've seen is they don't really say anything to them, but it's like some coaching assistants
Sure.
up in the booths banging on the glass.
Oh, they were doing a lot of that. I heard the Carolina coaches do it once, but Clemson did it like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
And again, like you're not going to say anything to them. They're obviously doing their job. They're coaching, but
Right.
most of the time you almost kind of forget they're there. And there's like a little divider on the glass where you can't like look in there and see them. So we're not staring at them or anything like that. But you almost kind of forget until like halftime when they're going to the bathroom or the game's over and they're all going down to the locker room after the game or whatever. But yeah, it's a very active press box on Saturday, and unfortunately didn't go Carolina's way, and that's led to Dave needing to go see his therapist apparently.
Yeah, luckily we have 16 visits a year, just in case.
Well, that's good. How many have you used so far?
Well, I used
How many just for that game?
I've used 3 for those already, and one a weekend. That's
Okay.
extra.
I was getting 4 and 8, so 8 different opportunities to use that for losses, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, hopefully next year's better, and hopefully next year you need 0 visits, or at least very few.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, because like when you have a good enough season and you lose a game, it's not really that big a deal. But when you're in the situation that they're in, 4 and 8 now, it's like, oh yeah, might need to talk to somebody about this. But at least you have that option. That's good.
Yeah, and you get to go, I don't know. So my whole life has been like this. You start thinking of all the
Yeah.
bad.
When did it begin? How much time you got?
Yeah. I can tell you when it began for me, because my first Clemson, South Carolina game that I attended freshman year at USC, that was the famous 56-20 game.
What year was that?
That was 1975.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a great game. But then the worst one was the Duke game, which was like a year or so later.
Okay. Now, because Bill talked about the other day, in his lifetime, he's only seen Carolina beat Clemson 5 times. So for your lifetime, how many times would that be? And Willie B, at least. How many times would that be for you?
South Carolina beat Clemson?
Yeah, in Williams-Brice. Do you know?
Not a lot. Maybe, let's say Spurrier years would be
The Spurrier years you had a couple in there.
2 or 3. And then there was the 84 year and the 80. I think we won in 87 as well. So I can think of 5 or 6.
Because what's the first game in the rivalry you have memories of? What year?
You mean going to it, or
Just being a fan, watching it on TV, listening to it on the radio, whatever it may be.
Well, they weren't on TV a lot back in those days. The first thing I really remember, South Carolina going to the College World Series was on TV. That was a big deal.
Okay.
And a lot of basketball. We used to have basketballs on TV all the time.
Sure.
And those years with John Roach and all those guys, loved those years. So those are my earliest memories. The football was not just hardly ever on TV.
Gotcha. Yeah, until really like the late 80s. Because I know it was Vince Dooley and Barry Switzer when he was at Oklahoma. They had that lawsuit, I think against the NCAA, that allowed more TV availability windows. And now everything's on TV, right? Like if I want to watch Division III lacrosse playoffs, I can do that. It's on ESPN Plus. Now now you're shocked when something isn't on TV, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, even like the bye games that, when you used to be, when you play a Charleston Southern or a Citadel or something like that, it'd be a pay-per-view game, and you have to pay like $30 or whatever to watch the game, to watch Carolina beat up on whoever it was. Now it's just on SC Network Plus. So if you have the regular TV package, then you can just watch it on the app or your laptop or phone or whatever.
Yeah, and growing up, since I grew up near Greenville, I got to hear Jim Phillips and all the Clemson games.
Yeah.
I wasn't excited about, but
Well, you didn't manage to become a Tater, so there's that.
That's true. That
Yeah.
was a black sheep of the family.
Yeah. Oh, so your whole family's Clemson fans.
Yeah. Oh, well, not all of them, but a lot of them.
Well, I see why that loss weighs so heavily on you then.
Yeah. The
So-
garnet and black sheep. That's what
Yeah, there you go. Hopefully the therapy's helping out there. We'll continue to talk about that game throughout the day. Bill getting in here, some things he wanted to touch on from yesterday, the 3rd and 3, the 4th and 3 after that, some of the post-game comments that we didn't dive super deep into that we'll do throughout the show today. Also going to talk about this crazy coaching carousel that is almost done spinning. In terms of like the big jobs, I want to say Penn State's maybe the only one left, and it seems like Kalani Sitake from BYU's probably going to get that job, which seems kind of out of left field. I mean, he's doing a good job at BYU. I just didn't think that's where Penn State was looking, but regardless, seems like everything else kind of buttoned up. We've obviously had all the SEC vacancies get filled, including Kentucky, who, if you slept in too long, then you missed them firing Mark Stoops and then hiring Will Stein, the offense coordinator at Oregon. So that's going to be interesting to see, as well as obviously the Lane Kiffin saga. Everything going on in Baton Rouge is he's now officially been introduced as the new head coach of the LSU Tigers. Press conference yesterday and all that kind of stuff. We'll get into some of that.
Does the Kentucky hire worry you some?
I don't see. That's the tricky thing. Coordinators are so really any coaching hire is so up in the air. You can like again Billy Napier. He had success at the G5 and he failed at Florida. I mean, I think John Summerall will be good at Florida, but God, they could be firing him in 3 years for all I know. I mean, God, Scott Frost killed it at Central Florida and failed miserably when he went home to Nebraska. And you just never know. It's really up in the air. I do think that, it's a guy in Will Stein that was probably in position to get a head coaching job soon and returning home to Kentucky in a place where he grew up a Kentucky fan, went to Louisville and all that kind of stuff. Offensive guy. Obviously, they need help on offense. It's kind of been a roller coaster for them over the past couple of years. I think it makes a lot of sense. Will it work? I don't know. But here's the thing. You're going to see him every single year. So you're going to get to watch the Will Stein era unfold in real time, both here and in Lexington, for whatever that we consider that to be a rivalry or not, continues on.
I have to admit it worries me because, we are playing Kentucky every year, and Oregon's pretty good. So
yeah. Well, and, the rivalry kind of, I guess it turned into a rivalry in the past handful of years with the sunglasses thing, sunglasses gate, whatever we want to call it. And we'll see if Will Stein leans into that or not, and see if that the edge that it had continues.
Yeah, I bet it doesn't. I bet he doesn't go that way. I just think he's.
So we'll see. But a lot of things to get into, including accepting the reality of 4-8. Now that the season has come and gone, how do we look back on this? What was good? What was bad? And when did we know that this season probably wasn't going to go well? We'll dive into all that coming up. It is the halftime show. Saturday Captain Day. Bill Gunner will be along shortly on your Tuesday on the Game.
I can 1,000,000,000% promise you this: when we have a hell of a season in 2026, and when I'm doing this press conference after the Clemson game next year, and we finish the regular season, that because of the success that we're going to have next season, I know we will, we're going to look back at this season and say it sucked going through it, but because of what we went through in 25, it led us to what we just did in 26. I'm 1,000,000% confident in that.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave. Bill Gunner be along shortly as we're continuing to go back over not only the Clemson game on Saturday, but also this season as a whole, as we've got it all in the rearview mirror now. South Carolina is 4-8 and now endures the long, cold off season before they play somebody in week number 1. Still don't know who that replacement for for Miami is going to be, but Beamer, once again, and we've heard this a lot over the past couple of weeks, as it became very evident that Carolina was not going to make a bowl game, making proclamations and promises. Hey, a year from now, when we're watching the Tuesday night ranking show, we're going to be part of that. We're going to be, in the mix for the playoff and all that kind of stuff, and saying the same thing on Saturday. 1,000,000,000% confident that they're going to be in a better spot come the Clemson post-game presser coming up next year, and we can't prove him wrong. He's just going to have to wait and see what happens. But the frustrating part about that, and here's the thing, I don't have a problem with them saying that, because you're supposed to say that, right? When asked about the future, you're not going to sit here and say, well, we're probably going to be about 5-7 next year or 6-6. Like, no, nobody wants that. And as a coach, if you're already accepting defeat, well, then if you're already admitting defeat, well, then you've already lost, right? And you have to have the most positive outlook as a coach. That's part of your job. And we can all roll our eyes at some of the Coach Peak stuff that they say, but that's the kind of things that you're supposed to say in those situations. And time will tell if Beamer's right, or if a year from now, after the Clemson game, we're talking about, well, I wonder who the next head coach of this team's going to be. Well, we'll have to see. And we truly won't know until the games unfold. But the thing that makes hearing that much more frustrating is that that's what this season was supposed to be. Right? Like, you were already there on the cusp of things last year. The natural hope from your fan base is to take the step forward, not take a massive step back and say, well, I think we're going to be back there again next year. Like, no, you're already there. We wanted you to take the next step forward and get yourself into the playoff. Now, was that a lofty expectation? Sure, considering the talent that they lost from a year ago, but not impossible. Again, look at what these other programs around the country that are that turn themselves around the blink of an eye are doing. Indiana went from a nobody to a powerhouse overnight. Vanderbilt went from being, 6-6 a year ago to 10-2. I don't know if they're going to make the playoff or not, but they make a strong and compelling case for themselves. So these other programs are doing it. Why are you the one that took the step back? Was it because of the decisions you made with the coaching staff? Was it because of your portal evaluations not going right? For the most part, there's a lot of reasons to it. And there's a lot of things that Beamer's going to have to correct this offseason, starting right now when it comes to the staff that you have. When it comes to, you're obviously going to get recruits in or sign your recruiting class tomorrow. We'll see how much of an impact that has on 2026, but also the transfer portal, open it up a month from now. And what you do there, it's all going to be dependent. 2026 season is all dependent on those decisions that you make and how all that unfolds going forward. So we'll see. As we look back on this season, again, you won 4 games. I don't know what win you hang your hat on necessarily, because none of them were really great. In fact, the 3 wins you have against FBS opponents are all against schools that have now fired their head coach. Brent Pry got fired at Virginia Tech like 2-3 weeks after you played him. Mark Stoops got fired at Kentucky just the other day. And same thing with Tim Beck at Coastal Carolina. So, you don't have a signature win on your calendar to look back on and say, well, 2025 season wasn't great, but at least you got that win against Kentucky. Like, okay, that and Coastal, you're probably your 2 most complete games, but it's not something you're insanely proud of either. And that's frustrating because, again, you were in position to show consistency, right? And yeah, maybe making the playoff was a little too lofty, but like 8-4 wouldn't have been insane. Hey, even 7-5. I think people, if you went 7-5 this year, not great, but it's 2-game difference. not a 5-game difference. And hindsight being 2020, it's easy to say you'd accept it now. Maybe you wouldn't have accepted it if that ended up, being the reality. But, we didn't expect to be in the position that you're in, taking this massive a step back. And look, Beamer talks about being close a lot, and he's not wrong, because you were in most of these games that you lost, which led to so many heartbreaking losses. I don't know. I guess A&M is easily the worst one. Maybe not easily, right? When you have a 4-touchdown lead on the road at the number 3 team in the country, and you blow that by scoring 0 points in the second half, that's a tough pill to swallow. I guess from the standpoint of it just being an utter collapse. I guess for the Alabama game, there was that belief with how well you had played, and Alabama, let's face it, didn't play their best game either that day, but you had them on the ropes, and you had an opportunity to put them away, or at least drive down the field and score again, and you turned it over. And that's kind of been a common theme this year. When you got your opportunity late in the game, fourth quarter, whatever, you give it away or you fail. And that happened again on Saturday with the loss against Clemson, where with everything that had gone wrong that day, with everything that had been up and down over the course of the first 56 minutes and 30 seconds, you got the ball, down 6 points, 95 yards to go to take the lead and maybe give yourself a reason to smile at the end of a tough season. And you blinked and boom, pick 6, game over at that point in time. And I've never seen the crowd empty out that fast, right? And the crowd was good on Saturday. You had a good showing of people ready to see you hopefully take down your rival and give some kind of positive note on what's been a disappointing year. And, when that pick 6 happened, they cleared out pretty quickly, which I don't blame them. I get it. And that's kind of been the story of the season. Unfortunately, you got a fan base that cares. They care a lot. Bill and I talked about it yesterday. We were so many times expecting that people just check out and not care, that Reaction Mondays would come in here and we'd get nothing because people had checked out a few weeks before. And maybe it was because you were playing so many close games and you had a historical loss like you did against A&M that makes people just fired up again, as opposed to getting blown out by 30 or 40 points or whatever it may be. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But this fan base cares. This fan base wants to see you be successful. They want to see you win. And, this year didn't unfortunately live up to that. So it's going to be a busy offseason in terms of trying to figure out where things went wrong, trying to correct those things. Well, guess what? You look around, everybody else in college football is doing the exact same thing. Even the best teams are never satisfied with where they're at, so they're trying to get better. They're trying to improve. They're trying to make their situation as good as it can be while you're doing the same thing. So hopefully you find your avenue of that success and figure things out while everybody else is trying to do the same thing. Because again, next year's gonna be pivotal, make or break season. Get ready through the spring and summer when those hot seat rankings and lists come out. Guess who's going to be probably towards the very top of that? It's going to be Shane Beamer. And again, that comes with having success like last year. That comes with getting a contract extension. All those things, when you're not living up to it, even in just 1 year later, you get put in those conversations. And we'll see. Look, I like Shane. I think Shane's a good dude. I think Shane really does want to be here. Talks about this being his dream job. I believe that. Gosh, he could have left for Virginia Tech if he wanted to. Didn't do that. That seemed like a perfect opportunity to go back and coach as an alma mater in the place that his father made famous, and he didn't do that. He wanted to be here. And we'll see if he can do enough to continue that on. But 2026 is going to be pivotal. That's for sure. What kind of things is Beamer going to have to do in the offseason? We'll get into some of that coming up next, what he had to say after the game on Saturday as the halftime show rolls along. It's our at Captain Dave. Bill Gunner will be along shortly on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, Bill Gunner be along in just a moment as we continue to unpack not only the Clemson loss, but this season as a whole, which, I mean, with lack of a better term, was a failure. They're expected to be something good, at least make a bowl game, right? Like, this team went 7-5 and made a bowl game. I don't know, playing in the Liberty Bowl or something like that. I don't know if people would be thrilled about it, but you'd say, okay, it took a little step back, but it's not terrible, all things considered. But when you go from 9-3 to 4-8, there's really not a whole lot of positives you can glean from that, which is why this offseason is so pivotal for Shane Beamer. And a lot of decisions are going to have to be made. And on Saturday, when he talked to Todd Ellis after the game, he detailed some of the things on his checklist that he's going to have to get done here relatively soon.
We have a lot to get done here going forward. We got signing day on Wednesday, and I'm really excited about this signing class that we're going to sign on Wednesday. There's some day one difference makers on and off the field that we're going to bring into this program. A lot of them were here today and can't wait to be a part of this and know that they don't want to go through a season like this either, like we just went through. We'll meet as a team on Monday, kind of recap the season and talk about what's next with them. But there's a lot to get done in regards to, hires on the coaching staff and other areas of the program. But there's, we've this season was a really big disappointment in so many ways, record-wise. But, I also realize I think today was the 7th game that we've had this season that was a one-score game going into the fourth quarter. And we just haven't played well enough in the fourth quarter. And if we play better in the fourth quarter, we're all sitting here with a different feeling today and throughout the season. So we're not far away from where we need to get back to. It's a fine line. We got to be better with the details here going forward, but can't wait to get started on 2026. Already been doing some things from that standpoint prior to today from a staffing standpoint, and now that's over, after we get through signing day on Wednesday, can completely turn my full attention to staffing decisions and elevating this program, which is what I'm going to do, and my job as the head coach.
Ifs are really funny things, because you mentioned there, if we'd close some games out in the fourth quarter, it'd be a different story. Well, you didn't. That's the problem. Yes, ifs are great. If we did a lot of things, if a lot of things changed, then the entire world could be different in a lot of ways. But the reality is you didn't. And that's what the frustrating part is. Yes, you were in so many of those games, which is where the closeness comes from. He's not wrong. Again, it's not like you're getting beat by 40 points in every single game. You had a lead on Missouri. You had a lead on Alabama. You had your opportunity against A&M, despite how bad that second half went. You had your opportunity against Clemson, despite how up and down that game was, and you failed to cash in on all of those. And again, we saw it last year. The Missouri game, the Clemson game a year ago. Opportunities where it seemed like your back was up against the wall, and you found a way to win. And that's another area that you have regressed in. So, yes, you're not wrong that they are close, but you were there a year ago, and now you're not. So what did you do in the offseason or whenever it was that caused that regression? Was it your staff? Was it what you had as a play caller in Mike Shulo? Was it your offseason training? Was it, I don't know, what they're eating for lunch during spring practice? I don't know. But everything when you have a 4-8 season is worth examining under the microscope. And he's right. You're going to go sign a class tomorrow that looks to be in the top 20 according to most of the major outlets. And I know he said there's going to be some day one contributors. Okay, but that's a very small part. We talked about this yesterday. You might have 2 or 3 guys that play a really large, significant role in this team out of your freshman class next year. But last time I checked, there's 11 guys on offense, 11 guys on defense, 11 guys on special teams. You got a whole lot of other areas you got to figure out with the guys that you have in terms of developing them to a point to be better. Guys, you're going to go out there and get in the transfer portal to fill the holes that you have this year. A lot of things to be done. And the staff, too. It sounds like we're getting closer to an offensive coordinator hire. When that happens, we don't know. And I know if you stayed on Twitter long enough on Sunday, it seemed like John David Baker was a done deal. Oh, he's on the plane. He's coming down here. Don't believe everything that you read. Wait till it's being reported on by reputable, outlets like Gamecock Central, The Big Spur, and stuff like that. That's a big hire. As we've talked about so many times, you got to get that right. What are you going to do with offensive line coach? Is Sean Elliott going to continue doing it? Are you going to make other staff changes? Running back coach, defensive assistants? What's going to happen with Clayton White? A lot of things have to happen very soon here that are going to set the tone for what 2026 is going to be, as we continue to say, a ultimate make-or-break year for Coach Beamer. Welcome in.
If you go to our live stream, you can tell I'm fresh off my hike in the Antarctic, the way I'm dressed.
I was going to say Puff Daddy. That's probably not a good
let's not
analogy
use him.
to make these days. But
Let's not use him.
the coat.
Yeah.
The coat.
Yeah. Warmness, weather. Not today, and it's cold, and so yes, the puffy, wintry jacket is on with the winter beanie. Yeah, I do. If you go to our live stream, you will wonder, hey,
what's the top of Everest look like?
Oh, he's 40 minutes late. That's impressive that he got back from Mount Everest and that quick, actually. Give him credit. Listen to you talk a lot, and kind of what you were saying. I think, we move further and further away from the season, and you mentioned signing day tomorrow. And there's a lot to unpack, as you have said. Leadership. And I made this comment on Twitter, half jokingly, half tongue-in-cheek, half serious, earlier this year about Lenore Sellers and a leadership meeting. Whatever they have, I don't know. Making a comment about the helmets that they were going to wear. And it was a joke. It was a joke. But at the same time, the way Shane Beamer kind of worded it in the press conference, you're like, is that what Lenoris is worried about, the helmets? Because it was also the second time it had been brought up that Lenoris is very concerned about the uniform combinations. And there is a difference, and I've hounded this. I hounded this for the last few weeks. We did it with DeMarco and with John Strickland. But the flat-out truth of this team is, Tyler, there was no leadership on this team.
It didn't seem like it, at least from what, and again, we're not in the locker room, we're not at practice. From what we can see, there was a clear difference in last year and this year. Yeah.
I mean, and that's going to have to be addressed. I think it's going to be really interesting how you go about addressing that in the transfer portal, because obviously it's one thing to have a great leader but be a bad player, right?
Sure.
You don't want that.
No, your third string left tackle is not a leader on your team. It can be a guy that, helps out. He can, wave the towel on the sidelines. That's fine, but he's not the one giving you an impassioned speech when you get the ball down 6 points with 3.5 minutes to go win the game against Clemson. That's not his role.
Right, and so that's one thing that they're going to have to really analyze, and in a transfer portal where you don't have much time. Speed dating is what we're now referring to it.
Yeah.
You've got to find the guys that are going to come in, much like last year when Demetrius Knight and other players went to, much like in 2024, went to Shane Beamer after the Alabama game. It was like, we're not letting this happen anymore. We've been too close. We had the LSU game, and we had the Alabama game, and we're not allowing this to happen. And they didn't allow it to happen, and they won 6 straight. You didn't have that this year. The bottom line is leadership does not allow you to go, 0-6 in the games. You win. You stumble into one of those.
Yeah, usually. The law of averages tell you that you should find a way to accidentally win one of those.
You stumble into one of those, and that didn't happen. So there's going to be that. Tomorrow, South Carolina will get really good news, it appears. They are going to flip 4-star running back, a guy that they have been on for a long time, Carson Baker from Florida. I think that's going to help. That there is one guy who can come in and potentially make an impact quite early on. Running back is a position, and you can match him with, if you're still going to play Jawan Howell, if you're going to play Matthew Fuller. Baker's a 4-star prospect, had a lot of big-time offers, has a 91.15 ranking or grade from Rivals. 24/7 Sports has him at a 90. They have him as a top 20 overall running back in the country. In what has been a string of bad news, here is good news tomorrow, and you hope that that's a springboard to something different moving forward.
Yeah, and again, the running back room is so interesting because you're losing Rasul Faison, you're losing Oscar Attaway, and again, it's so hard to predict things now because, you could have Howell, you could have Fuller back, or maybe they could decide to go elsewhere. You still know. That's the nature of college football now. But assuming those guys, if they were to come back, then you add Baker to that. Okay, now you've got something. What happens with Isaiah Gustav? I don't know. I forgot he was on the team for half the year. Like, you start kind of trying to do the math on that, and it's hard to project. But if you can hang on to what you got that are eligible to return and add him to the mix, maybe have something there. I don't know. We obviously saw good things out of Fuller and Howell down the stretch, and hopefully you can build off that.
803-404-6200. We'll come back, touch on a few other things you brought up from the hour, and get ready for hour number 2. I am back fresh off a trip to Mount Everest. Captain Dave holding the fort down. You okay in there? I was able to catch you talk a little bit about how you handled Sunday.
You had to go to therapy.
Oh, that's all right. Nothing wrong with that. Doing those mental health videos, nothing wrong with therapy. And Tyler Head keeping us in line. You're listening to the Halftime Show. Bill Gunner for the Mortgage Guru, Jacob Crowder and First Palmetto Bank. Let me tell you, Jacob has been in this market for 20 years, helping families just like yours, just like mine. He helped mine just about 5 years ago, getting them the proper advice, needs, and information that they have to have when you go to purchase a new home. That's right. Whether you're purchasing a new home, building a new home, maybe you're just refinancing, or you're thinking about remodeling your home, that loan you need is pretty vital. So you need to call Jacob Crowder and see what the interest rates are today. 803-719-1005. Again, that's 803-719-1005. That's how you can get in touch with the Mortgage Guru, Jacob Crowder, and First Palmetto Bank. See what the interest rates are, what money you got to put down, and how much he can save you today. 803-719-1005. It's 12:49 on a Tuesday. So we get you going. Again, tomorrow, signing day, 12 to 3. We'll have full coverage. Be able to really tell you about then more of who South Carolina has signed, what letters of intent have come through the fax machine.
Mm-hmm. Well, they don't use fax machines anymore.
They don't. Oh,
no, I know you covered recruiting for a long time, so I'm sure the stories of signing days over the years for you have evolved quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, this used to be like a national holiday when it was in February, right? I mean, ESPNU used to have wall-to-wall coverage from 6 a.m. to midnight, basically, of signing day and commitments being announced and classes and all that kind of stuff. And now, like, early signing day has become signing day, essentially. Still got the one in February, but early signing day is where most people, sign their letter of intent and all that kind of stuff, which that doesn't even exist anymore, right? The LOI is that still a thing? It's changed now, right?
I don't think it is a thing anymore.
It's not a
I don't
thing.
think it's a legitimate thing, yeah.
But even like early signing day doesn't quite have the cachet and pop that national signing day used to.
They keep moving it around. It was middle of December, the 16th through the 18th, somewhere in there. Now it's obviously the beginning of December, so coaches can get it out of the way for the playoffs and bowl season, but we'll have full coverage. There is big information, big news that has just popped up in the last hour. Vanderbilt has officially flipped. 5-star quarterback Jared Curtis from Georgia. Now, Jared Curtis, at one time, South Carolina thought they had a good chance to land him. He is rated as one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the country, depending on where you want to look. He's from Nashville. Mm-hmm. He's going to stay home now and is the heir apparent to Diego Pavia.
So let's dial back the clock like 5 years, right? Let's go back to COVID in 2020, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. If I said, all right, Bill, I have a crystal ball. By the way, nice to meet you. We hadn't met at that point in time, but I said I have a crystal ball, and I can tell you 2 facts from the future in college football in 2025. One of them is that Indiana just had an undefeated season, is looking like a favorite for the national championship, and 2 is that Vanderbilt is one of the best teams in the SEC, and they just signed are flipping a 5-star quarterback from Georgia. What would be harder to believe?
I had seen Vanderbilt have success with James Franklin and Bobby Johnson, not to this level.
Okay.
Nowhere near to this level. But give me the Vanderbilt scenario.
Okay.
Give me the Vanderbilt scenario. Like, both are beyond. Both are like, all right, how much do you want to wager on either one of those?
Sure.
I
don't know if you.
Let me get on the phone with the mortgage guru, Jacob Crowder, and see what loan I can take out.
I don't know how far into the future you can make those kind of bets, but if you bet on Indiana 12-0 in 2025 years ago, I don't know. You could have made a $5 bet and retired on that.
What is it? Your sports almanac?
Yeah.
You got your Michael J. Fox sports almanac.
Yeah, go back in time and that would. My goodness.
Yeah. Well, Vanderbilt, they have. But I see this, and you mentioned Will Stein to Kentucky, and we'll see how that goes. But I see people going like, well, these programs are serious about football. These programs are serious about football. What do we define as serious about football? Like what makes the Kentucky firing a coach for a guy that if South Carolina hired, a lot of y'all would be ticked off?
Yeah. I mean, look, he's coordinating a team that has a good shot at playing for a national championship.
Well, and has a lot of talent.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying I could go make Dante Moore and Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel look great, but it's a lot easier, right?
Well, look, hiring a coach is such an imperfect science.
It is.
Because there are so many things that look like slam dunk, absolute. Like Jimbo Fisher at A&M. It's like, okay, yeah, that's probably going to work. And he wasn't like a colossal failure, but he didn't live up to what people thought he was going to be. I brought it up earlier. Scott Frost to Nebraska seemed like the most obvious coaching hire of all time. This guy killed it at Central Florida. He's returning back home to return his alma mater to their past glory, and he wasn't anywhere close. Like, it's so imperfect. Dabo Sweeney, when he got promoted to head coach at Clemson back in 2008, nobody thought he was going to turn it into a national powerhouse, but he did. It's just so... It's such an imperfect science.
And it's like Brian Kelly. We thought Brian Kelly would have a lot more success.
Yeah. Which he was
at
like...
LSU.
He was fine. He wasn't like national championship good, but they weren't like 2-10.
And that's... But I see this because I also saw some other people like, oh, they flipped Vanderbilt, flipped Jared Curtis. They're serious about football. Everybody's serious about football.
Yeah.
South Carolina is serious. How they go about doing it at times may leave you scratching your head and make you wonder what decisions are being made and why that decision is being made. But a year ago, South Carolina was in the Vanderbilt footprint, the Vanderbilt where they are now. They weren't 10-2. I get that. They were 9-3. But it was an incredible year. You had a darling of college football. You don't have it this year. There's no reason, really, you can't come out of nowhere and have it again next year.
Yeah. Why? I mean, very possible. You're going to need to have something like that to keep this train rolling, or there's going to be a lot of changes to be made in the 2026 offseason. But, yeah, it's not impossible. And, unfortunately, I think Carolina is a program that's kind of just up in the air on a year-to-year basis because we haven't seen consistency.
I think a lot of programs are on a year. I mean, look at Florida State right now. Look at Florida, who Steve Spurrier taking shots at Billy Napier now, kind of on the way out. We'll come back. Hour 2 on the way. We'll get into like 3rd and 3 and a few things specific from Saturday's game. Also, we got to talk some Lane Kiffin. We haven't gotten there yet, and no, that needs to happen. A lot to do. 2 hours to do it. It's the halftime show.
Time right here for our friends over at Pro Swing Columbia. It is nasty outside, and it's going to be cold and wet and rainy and all that kind of stuff for the next handful of months. Not exactly ideal conditions to be out on the golf course. That's where our friends over at Pro Swing come in. You can enjoy golf on courses quite literally all over the world inside a nice climate-controlled environment on their golf zone simulators. You can rent by the hour, and they have memberships available as well to get your golf fix, even when the weather is nasty outside. You can also work on your golf game, like your swing, while you're there. They have free 30-minute swing evaluations. They use the OnForm coaching app during those evaluations that will give you a before and after video of your swing, as well as some drills to work on particular aspects of your game. You can get discounted rates to practice and play at Pro Swing if you're actively taking lessons as well. You can book online at ProSwingColumbia.com or give them a call at 803-592-3916. Pro Swing Columbia in Forest Acres and in Chapin. All right, welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler Head, Bill Gunner, Captain Dave on your Tuesday here on the game. So much happened over the weekend. We obviously spent the majority of the time talking about the Clemson game, rightfully so. But I want to say we might have set a record for amount of coaches hired in one day, certainly for a conference. Because Sunday specifically, 5 coaches were hired. 1 was fired, by the way, that being Mark Stoops at Kentucky. They've since hired Will Stein. That was clearly in the works well before that firing happened. Believe it or not, almost half of the SEC is going to have a new head coach next year.
We didn't have any last year.
We didn't have any last year.
So you knew that this was coming. Whatever we want to call it, Black Sunday, Axe Sunday, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But what you're seeing, and this will become the new trend, and we kind of talked about this, what you're seeing, Tyler, is teams making their decisions early with Hugh Freeze, with Sam Pittman, with Billy Napier, and having their guy lined up. And we can call it tampering, or you can say whatever you want to say.
Is it tampering if everybody's doing it?
Yes, doesn't change. But what I was, again, to that point, what it is this is the new era of college football. You get a month now to prove what you're going to do if you're on the hot seat, and then you very likely will be out.
Well, and the Stoops situation was so interesting. We can dive into specifically in a moment because they fired a guy and hired a guy within basically like 24 hours, if even that long. But with the way the calendar is, and that's a hot button of discussion in college football, you go from your season ending on Saturday to signing 99% of your class 4 days later. You can't go on that. You can't fire your coach at the end of the year and then start your coaching search, right? You have to be proactive, get ahead of it, talk to these guys, have your list of guys, all that kind of stuff, and make that decision before signing day gets here, because I guarantee you most guys don't want to sign with a place where they don't know who the head coach is. Penn State, I haven't checked to see if Kalani Sitake has been confirmed as their head coach or not, but that ideally needs to get done within the next 12 hours so the recruits that are signing with Penn State know who they're playing for.
Well, that's a very interesting point. I have that on my list here. This is Penn State settling, right?
Oh, it absolutely is. No, this was, and look, they're going to do the thing that they always do. When they get up in the press conference, say, we got our guy. This is who we want. We wanted Kalani Sitake, even though they're lying through their teeth. And look, Kalani Sitake has done a good job at BYU. That team could be in the playoff if they beat Texas Tech coming up this weekend, but you can't convince me that was their number one choice initially when they fired James Franklin.
Right. No, or 2, or likely 3, and I'll even go as far as 4. And then
maybe 5.
Well, I was going to say, after you get past 4, you're basically like poking your head down the hall going, all right, who's got a coaching background? But that's going to be one. But I do think for South Carolina fans, and when we talk about next year, and if Shane Beamer is on the hot seat, so if that's what it is, how much time he gets, and we'll, this month, I don't think the SEC has put out a date yet for when they'll do this little show.
It's usually late-ish December, right? Typically,
no, normally it's middle of the season, so when you're. Normally we get the dates.
Well, we got the team reveal mid-season this year, but I imagine, I don't know, maybe before Christmas we get the special of, hey, here's who you're playing when type thing.
Yeah, it's so. So with that being said, yeah, they did the team reveal. So now they've moved the date, the actual order, and again, South Carolina, remember, is going to play 9 straight SEC games.
Yes,
there'll be some bye weeks mixed in, but there's 9 straight.
One, you only get 1 next year.
Okay, 1 bye week next year.
Yep.
So there's going to be 9 straight. You get my point. 10 straight weeks, 9 of which are SEC contests. But I say that because look what happened this year. Nobody waited. Kentucky waited, but that was a done deal. And it might have been a done deal on November 1st for all we know.
Yeah. Well, and that, again, we dove into the schedule a little bit yesterday where you're going to face a lot of the SEC teams that are probably going to be making the playoff here coming up in a couple weeks. So it's like, all right, again, they'll play directional school, State University, in week number 1. Should win that. Play Towson week number 2. Should win that. All right, congratulations, you're 2-0. Here comes your stretch run of 10 straight Power 4 teams, 9 in the SEC, and then Clemson to wrap things up. Well, let's say your schedule starts off Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma. All 4 teams that we expect to be in the college football playoff. What if you lose all 4 of those games and you're suddenly 2-4?
Right.
It's like, okay, is that enough? But do you factor in the fact that all those teams might not have lost any games and are on their way to playing in the playoff again? Where do you balance that? It's like, okay, well, then, I don't know, you go out there, beat Florida, maybe beat Arkansas. All right, well, now you're 4-4. Then you lose to Tennessee. Like, again, I'm throwing hypotheticals out there, but this is real conversations you have to have.
Well, it's where negotiating behind the scenes is going to come into play.
Yeah.
How competitive is your team? But with that being said, again, are you negotiating behind the scenes saying, hey, are you interested?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, no, we don't have a job opening yet.
If we, hypothetically,
Right.
if we did, would that be something you would take interest in?
Right. And that's where I see that going. But that is a small piece of now the college football year that has also changed that we're going to have to adjust to, just like we had to with NIL, with transfer portal, with everything else. The coach doesn't get 12 games to get it figured out.
No.
5 max, almost 6. 6 is the max, I bet.
Sure. Yeah, and again, what if your schedule's more favorable on the front end to where you start off the season 5-1 or 6-0 or something like that, and then it falls apart down the stretch? Then it's like, okay, well, now you're in the same boat that you were essentially a year ago and miss a bowl game or whatever, and then is it too late in the process to make your changes? I don't know. Again, these are all hypotheticals because we don't know what the schedule is going to look like, but there's no denying you're facing one of the toughest schedules in the SEC once again next year, and you're fighting the uphill battle of trying to get yourself to the point of being more competitive after what this year was.
Yeah, and that's what Shane Beamer will face, and of course we'll talk more about that as we get more information tomorrow. Obviously, there are other flip candidates. Jillian Walker from Dutch Fork is a big one. I mentioned Carson Baker. We'll get into that. I tell you what, let's listen to, but new coaches coming in.
Yep.
How they're able to generate excitement. Captain Dave, this is number 2. Let's play this. This is Alex Golesh, and this is, I feel like, this is in the coach's playbook of taking over to create new excitement. Here's Alex Golesh, new Auburn coach.
What you're going to get from me, from our staff, and as we get rolling, our players, is the hardest working, toughest, grittiest program in the entire country. We're going to work day in, day out. We're going to find wins in every single margin we could find. We're going to be the most violent freaking team on the football field every single Saturday.
That'll get you fired up on it.
That's from the Dan Campbell playbook of exciting a fan base. We're going to bite kneecaps and bite necks and all those kind of things. And it sounds good. Now you got to go out there and do it, obviously. But I don't know if I think that was one of the criticisms of Hugh Freeze's tenure at Auburn is that the team maybe lacks some physicality. Okay, well, here's a guy that says he's going to come in and make the team nothing but physical. Now, violent can take on a lot of different meanings, obviously, and I think he's just more talking about being hard-hitting and hard-nosed and all that kind of stuff. And if that happens, great. That's exactly what Auburn needs. But, we'll see. And, look, there's – with how many coaches got hired in this cycle, the law of averages tell you that maybe 2 of them end up lasting, 4 to 5 years or get a second contract at their respective schools. But more often than not, a lot of these schools are going to be looking for new head coaches within the next 3 to 4 years because they're not going to meet the level of expectation that those schools set up for them. And funny enough, when you look at Arkansas, when you look at Kentucky, places like that, where the level of expectation isn't quite as high as Auburn, as Florida, as LSU, as Ole Miss, as these other places, maybe those coaches, maybe Ryan Silverfield, maybe it is Will Stein that end up, lasting the longest when it comes to what their expectations are and where they take those teams. Because I don't know if Ryan Silverfield consistently goes 8-4 in the next 4 years, I don't think they're going to fire him. If he starts missing bowl games, sure, because that's kind of what got Sam Pittman in trouble. But you're not expected to walk into Arkansas and become a national championship contender right out of the gate. It's going to take some time. Now you're going to need resources to do that too. And I remember back to when Sam Pittman was fired a couple of months ago that the AD there even said, hey, we didn't give him the resources that he needed to be successful. Well, I think that's maybe a little bit of a blame on you that you didn't give your head coach what he needed to be successful. And, why are you going to wait for the new guy to come in? But that's besides the point. Ryan Silverbill comes in now, and we'll see what he ultimately ends up being able to do, here at Arkansas. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. But, again, we're talking about almost half the conference, or at least a third of the conference, dealing with new head coaches next year. And Carolina does get to see a handful of those guys. Will Stein at Kentucky, because you have Kentucky as Daniel Rivenel. Same thing with John Summerall out there at Florida. You're going to see Ryan Silverfield at Arkansas too. So does that benefit you? Is it an advantage that you're taking on teams and new coaches? We'll see. Because guess what? They're going to have the same opportunity to go out and get portal talent and all that kind of stuff to build their roster very quickly, just like you. So you hope that those are games that work in your favor. We don't know. We'll see. Because, again, I think Kurt Cignetti has shown you at Indiana, you can flip things around real fast if you're a good enough coach and have the resources given to you to succeed. So we'll see what happens. We'll get into what the Lane Train had to say in his introductory press conference out there in Baton Rouge coming up next as the halftime show. Tyler Head, Bill Gunner, Captain Dave rolls along on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Bill Gunner, Captain Dave, along with you on your Tuesday here on the game. We'll get into what Lane Kiffin had to say at his introductory press conference out in Baton Rouge coming up in just a moment, but we'll head out to the AAA Heat and Air phone lines. We got Ray wants to talk Shane Beamer in this fan base. Ray, appreciate the call as always, man. What's on your mind?
Hey, Bill, how you doing, man?
We're good. How are you?
All right, good, doing good. Well, what I was going to say is, I guess, if you go back the last 10 years, 5 years of Coach Muschamp, let's start in 2016, forget 2015, all the way up to now, so that's 10 years. I guess our offense here, you would say, has been below average. Wouldn't you say that, Tyler?
I would agree.
For the most part?
Yep.
So I think the fan base here, talking about the Gamecocks, we're so desperate for a good offensive coordinator, for good, consistent offensive play. Tyler, I think you can make up some offensive coordinators' names. Just make them up. Make up the school. Make up the conference. Could be a lower-level school. And say, hey, this cat out there's put up, 500 yards a game at 40 points a game. And it could be some just small school. And you can throw a name out there, and you can say, you know what, he might be the next OC at Carolina. You'd have all of us so excited. I mean, we're just desperate for offensive football because it has sucked for so long,
Sure.
And I think that's just where the base is. But thanks for letting me talk, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the call. 803-404-6100. And that's where this hire is so critical. As we talked about plenty. Again, when Shula got fired now a month ago or whenever that was, we talked about how important this hire was going to be for Coach Beamer. And I think Furry's candidacy definitely came to an end on Saturday with only putting up 14 points and not making a single trip into Clemson's red zone over the course of 4 quarters. Again, we've talked about it. Still, ideally, we'd like to have him on staff and still like maybe have him as like a co-OC or something along those lines. But somebody else coming in here calling plays. And look, there's a lot of names being thrown out there, and I know the Twitter rumors had John David Baker basically confirmed to be here on Sunday. Well, that hasn't happened, and it does seem like things aren't quite so certain on that front as of right now. But we do expect the hire to be made relatively soon. Again, I thought maybe it was going to be happening before tomorrow, but maybe not the case. And I'm sure Beamer, when he does his signing day presser, will also be asked about that tomorrow and where things stand and all that kind of stuff. But the hire should be coming sooner rather than later. And you obviously got to figure out what direction you're going to go and ultimately how much of an impact Shane Beamer has on the offense, right? Because Ray's right. When you look back on the past basically decade since Steve Spurrier left, Carolina offenses has had more bad than good, right? You've had moments, you've had pockets. Even last year, you ran the ball really well, but rushing something that this program has struggled with for the better part of the decade since Coach Spurrier left. And it's like, okay, well, at some point, it becomes a Carolina problem or a head coach problem when you talk about the philosophies of what your offense is supposed to be. And it's not an uncommon thing. I always use the reference of Iowa, right? Kirk Ferentz is a legendary coach. He's the longest tenured coach in all of college football. Has been at Iowa since 1999. And more often than not, in his time at Iowa, they've had elite defense. They've had great special teams. Their offense has been meh to bad. And it was horrible a couple years ago when his son was calling plays. They go out there, they get a new offensive coordinator, flashy guy, and he comes in and it's the same type of offense because of the effect that Kirk Ferentz has on what's being done, the offense being run, plays being called, all those kind of things. His philosophy as a head coach when it comes to what kind of offense he wants run there. It seems like he doesn't let his offensive coordinators have free reign. And I can't tell you for sure if that's the same situation here with Beamer as to why the offense continues to look very similar despite the fact that you've now had 3 different play callers in your time here as the head coach. Is that something else he's got to assess in this offseason is, hey, maybe I'm having too much an effect on this. Maybe I need to step back. Maybe I need to be more open about these concepts or things that other teams are doing across college football when it comes to the way that my offense is being run. I don't know. That's certainly a very likely scenario, but we'll have to see. And I will say the fact that Beamer seems very motivated to make a college offensive hire is a good thing, right? That tells you, okay, this pro-style stuff, pro-type of offense maybe isn't netting the results that Coach Beamer wanted it to net. So can you go out there, make a hire, whoever it may be, that can come in and do something different, that can come in and maximize the talent that you had? Because I would love to see Lenore Sellers in a more college-friendly type of offense, because I do think that's something that can more maximize what his skill set is. And I'm not saying this is exactly the hire that you have to make, but look at somebody like Tim Beck at Vanderbilt. And I mean, really, they brought the entire New Mexico State offense over with him, Diego Pavia, Eli Stowers, those kind of guys, and run that system at Vanderbilt, and it works great. And it's a college type of offense that fits the style of what your quarterback is. And again, I'm not saying you have to come in here and run that same kind of spread option here at South Carolina, but though that kind of thinking, that kind of mindset that Clark Lea had to sit down and say, okay, things aren't going well here at Vanderbilt. What can I do to make this better? Maybe he was too hands-on with the offense. I don't know. But he looked himself in the mirror and said, okay, I got to go out there and change some things. Got to come in here with a different philosophy, different mindset to move this in the right direction. That seems to be what has happened at Vanderbilt. And again, they're to the point where they're signing 5-star quarterbacks now. Now there's apparently some speculation on how true that is with Jared Curse and all that kind of stuff. But it seems to be heading in that direction where they'll get potentially the heir apparent to Diego Pavia, assuming he's out of eligibility. Who knows? He could sue the NCAA again and be back for a 3rd season at Vanderbilt and a 12th season of college football. But regardless, things are going in the right direction there, as opposed to here where, again, you're at a situation where you've been statistically one of the worst teams in the SEC in almost every offensive category this year, and the results back that up. You know, you've won 4 games, and 3 of those against teams that have now fired their head coach, and one of them was against an FCS team in a game that you were supposed to win, right? So how do you go about changing that philosophy, change that mindset in terms of what you're looking for in your offensive coordinator, what freedoms you allow them to have, what freedoms you allow them to have with your staff as well? Because you can have offensive coordinators that come into a place and say, all right, I look around, I don't like what you have on the staff. I want to bring in my wide receivers coach. I want to bring in my running backs coach. I want to bring in my offensive line coach. Is that a deal breaker? Is that something where Coach Beamer would say, nah, I like the guys that I have? Or is it, you know what, with the offensive struggles, you get free reign. You can do whatever you want. Now, I would lean towards him wanting to retain Furry, him wanting to retain Sean Elliott and guys like that, but it all depends on who you're talking to. It all depends on who you're trying to hire and what their, quite frankly, listed demands are. Because when you're at this point with this offense, nothing's off the table. And again, I'm assuming this hire is going to be made hopefully relatively quickly as you can start building and working towards next year. Now you got to figure out also who's your quarterback going to be. Sellers, as he said the other day, has a decision to make. And he's going to take the time, as they always say, talk to the family and weigh the options and all that kind of stuff. So he could come back, which would be great. I feel a whole lot better about that than turning the reins over to a Landon Duckworth or a Cutter Woods or an Aaron Nolan, who have 0 combined starts in the SEC. And between Woods and Nolan, neither one of those guys has played real meaningful snaps up to this point. They played some garbage time stuff, but nothing in like serious, active, high-level competition in the SEC. So if Sellers is gone, you going out and getting a quarterback in the portal too? Is it a situation where if you hire an OC, does he have a quarterback that's willing to come with him? Or a couple of guys, a running back, a receiver, offensive lineman, whatever it may be. Do you get package deals? That'd be great if so. You just don't know. Until you make that hire, as Ray pointed out, you can make the hire and we're going to analyze the numbers and what they've done historically and their philosophies and all those kind of things and see how that's going to fit here at Carolina. And hopefully it's somebody people are going to be excited about, because so much of your fan base is down, rightfully so, with what the season's been. An exciting, splashy hire will do a lot of goodwill for what this offseason is going to be. And again, you're not going to go out there and hire Kyle Shanahan or something along those lines, but somebody with proven results in college. And maybe it is from the G5 level. I don't know. They've talked about the Old Dominion guy too. Something along those lines. Like just something to get some juice with the fan base, because there's not a whole lot of things to be excited about right now for where you currently sit until you start making those hires, until you start bringing in guys from the portal that seem like they're going to come in here and have a positive impact on your team. Because, again, you're going to have it. Next year is a make-or-break season for Shane Beamer. I don't think anybody here is doubting that or denying that. But it's going to be interesting to see. Appreciate the call, Ray, 803-404-6100. We'll get back into the coaching search, or not coaching search, the coaching carousel saga and what old Lane had to say in his introduction at LSU coming up next. It is the halftime show on your Tuesday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Saturday, Captain Dave along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. And, man, it's been a wild weekend across the college football landscape. We really didn't even, talk about the actual games that happened a whole lot yesterday. I'll get into that coming up a little bit later on in the show. We got a lot to discuss when it comes to the college football playoff top 25 and what the committee's going to do tonight and how they kind of view things coming up for, for the final rankings reveal coming up on Sunday and what kind of chess pieces they set in place in terms of all that with the college football playoff. But of course, the story that's been dominating college football is, of course, Lane Kiffin, who has now left Ole Miss, a team that they're locked in. I mean, there's no denying they're going to be playing in the college football playoff. Very likely to be hosting a first-round game coming up here in a couple weeks out there in Oxford, and Lane Kiffin will not be a part of that, obviously, as he moves on to LSU. And yesterday, we got our formal introduction to the new head coach of the LSU Tigers. Cut number 1 here from today's list, Dave, if you can. This is Lane Kiffin talking about, well, hey, this place is different. Cut 1.
I'm very honored to be the head coach of LSU. I can sum it up by saying this place is different. And having watched this place for a long time, having been on the other sidelines in this stadium, this place is different, and that's why we're here.
It's different, all right. Different set of expectations coming in, that's for sure. This whole story is just wild, right? And I find it so funny because look, we're ingrained in the grind of college football. We're all sickos. If you're listening to this program, you understand what college football is. And as crazy as the story is, it's only maybe like a 7 on the crazy scale when it comes to stories that we've seen and heard from over the years, as opposed to if you have that friend that only pays attention to like the NFL and stuff like that, and how corporate and in line everything seems to be in the NFL for the most part, and you told them this story, they wouldn't believe you. They'd say there's no way that happens, but it's just the nature of college football. And this is who Lane Kiffin is. It's funny in retrospect. I've been meaning to go back and watch the documentary that they did on him, like a month and a half ago, that they released on Lane Kiffin, and he's changed and how much he loves LSU or Ole Miss and all that kind of stuff. Watching it now, knowing what we know about him going to LSU and all that kind of stuff, and how different that's going to look, right? I need to go back and do that at some point over the month of December because, hey, we're not preparing for a bowl game, so may as well use my time wisely. And how I'll feel watching that now, knowing what we know about the decision that he has ultimately made, knowing it's not any different, right? And I guess maybe we're all the fools for thinking Lane Kiffin was going to change his ways, right? And I thought John Talty of CBS Sports had a really good in-depth article that he put out the other day that really detailed some of the behind-the-scenes stuff on how all this went down, Lane's process, the process of other schools that were talking to him, and how he ultimately decided to make the move to LSU. When you're reading some of these things, you're like, yeah, this looks like the same Lane Kiffin that was fired by the Raiders. This looks like the same Lane Kiffin that left Tennessee high and dry after one season in 2009. This looks like the same Lane Kiffin that got tarmacked by Southern Cal after a 1-4 start back in 2013. The same Lane Kiffin that Nick Saban said, yeah, I don't want you coaching the national championship. Why don't you go ahead and go to FAU? That same Lane Kiffin is still very much alive and well, and now has moved on to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And one of the key components, it seems, according to John Talty's story of CBSSports.com, was the lack of belief that Ole Miss could sustain things for Lane Kiffin there in Oxford going forward. Because, and especially now, we're new to revenue sharing and this new age of college football. This year's the first year where you had the roughly, $18 million salary cap. Call it salary cap. It's not really. And then you can add NIL components onto the back end of that. And look, Ole Miss is a place that I don't think anybody would say has the richest alumni base, but a passionate fan base nonetheless that up to this point has done a really good job of giving what they need to succeed on the field. Again, last year's Ole Miss transfer portal class was regarded as one of the most expensive ones in college football history up to this point. Now, yeah, they underachieved because they didn't make the playoff with it, but still, they went out there, got a lot more talent this offseason, maybe not as good as what they had a year ago, but this team's a playoff team. And according to Talty, it did seem like Kiffin had the concern of like, man, it's good now, but can you keep it going? And Keith Carter, the athletic director, and all the powers that be at Ole Miss tried their hardest, it seemed like, to convince Lane Kiffin, like, no, this will keep going. This is sustainable. Stay here. Stay here. We'll give you what you need to be successful. We'll match the offer that LSU's giving you. But Lane, in his mind, didn't believe that. And it seemed, and I keep going back to this, right? Because if you found out your wife started dating somebody else and you say, all right, it's me or the other guy, and she says, well, I need time to think about it. Well, that probably means she's going to go with the other guy, because if she was really happy with you, she would have started dating the other guy, right? Kind of the same situation here. If Lane Kiffin was truly happy with Ole Miss and was going to pick them, then this LSU saga would have come and went pretty quickly. But it didn't. It got drug out more. And when Keith Carter put out the statement prior to the Egg Bowl, a week before the Egg Bowl, that, all right, we're all focused on the Egg Bowl next week, we'll make a decision after that, I think most of us knew that's when he was gone. It's like, all right, you put that kind of thing out. If you have to make a statement about a coach's decision, then it's probably not going to go the way that you want it to. And I don't know, they had a slumber party over at Keith Carter's house, and he tried to convince Lane as much as he could, hey, please stay. We'll give you what you want, all this kind of stuff. And apparently Lane Kiffin did make those demands of, let me coach in the playoff or I'll poach the coaching staff. And I give a lot of credit to Keith Carter. And this is where everybody's split on this, right? Do you let him coach the bowl game? Do you let him coach the postseason? Or do you say kick rocks and enjoy your time at LSU? I got to go with Keith Carter on this one. You have a coach that is deciding to leave you on the cusp of your greatest season ever, or not on the cusp, at the conclusion of your greatest season ever. The final chapter is not yet written. You have the opportunity to go out there and win, 3 more games and play for or win a national championship? And he's choosing to leave for a rival? Like, if Kiffin left and wanted to take the Penn State job, that is a situation where you could say, okay, not great, but maybe they let him stick around. Maybe they let him coach out the college football playoff. But when you're going to a rival, a team that's coming into your barn next year to play, which, by the way, I don't know what day that game's going to be. I don't know what time that game's going to be, but I will find a way to watch it, whether Carolina's playing at the same time or not. I may have it on my laptop as a second screen, or, a second screen when I'm at home, or whatever it may be. That is a game I'm not going to want to miss, because we remember Lane Kiffin's return to Knoxville a handful of years ago with the mustard incident and all that kind of stuff. This one's going to go to the next level. Lane Kiffin has successfully burned every bridge he had in 2 different SEC cities. That's actually kind of impressive. But the vitriol for him is going to be at an all-time high when LSU trots back into Oxford coming up at some point next year. And it's going to be fascinating to watch. But again, he's going to a conference rival. And especially with the way this calendar is, and the calendar is something that's come up a lot with scrutiny, rightfully so, for how it's structured, because you essentially have your coaching cycle, your free agency period, and your version of the draft with signing day all happening basically simultaneously. Yes, the portal stuff got pushed a little bit further down the road, but still it's all happening within about a month of each other, as opposed to the NFL, which has those things spaced out, and their calendar is a whole lot better. But if Lane Kiffin's sticking around, and let's say Ole Miss goes all the way to the semifinals, being played on January 8th or 9th, whenever they are, basically towards the end of the portal cycle, well, the guy in charge of your program is not looking out for the best interest of your team in 2026, right? Now, yeah, you could theoretically name Pete Golding the head coach in waiting, but, Kiffin's not there trying to help you in the future. He's only focused on however many games he gets to coach in the playoff, and then he's gone, while he's actively recruiting against you in the portal at LSU. building his staff, building his roster, and all that kind of stuff. It wouldn't work. And there's so many people out there, the talking heads at ESPN, saying, well, how could you not let him coach the playoff when he got the team there? What's his choice to leave? And if he wants to leave, if he thinks there's a better opportunity at LSU, good luck to you, man. But we'll figure it out on our own. And if the football gods have a sense of humor, and I think they do, it would be what kind of poetic justice, right? That Lane Kiffin gets what he wants, goes to LSU, has the resources, the talent, all that kind of stuff, and he never makes the college football playoff and has to live with the fact that he walked away from his one opportunity to coach in that postseason at Ole Miss. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I think a lot of people are going to be rooting for it, right? Because like Lane Kiffin is this enigma that I think we all find charming to a degree because he's so different, and he very much reminds us of coaches of old that aren't afraid to take digs and be a little controversial. But like this is kind of next level where I feel like he's truly taken on that supervillain moniker in college football that I don't think there's going to be quite as many people on his side supporting this latest move for him as he goes to LSU. It's going to be fascinating to watch. And again, it sounds like there's going to be all the resources that he needs to go out there and sign high-level talent. We'll see what kind of stuff he does in the portal. We'll see what kind of talent he poaches. He had the tweet the other day. Again, he's that Twitter troll. He enjoys this stuff. He put out the tweet the other day with the flag of Trinidad, the country, like kind of winking and implying, hey, may steal Trinidad Chambliss from you. Bring him over to LSU, pay him a ton of money, which we'll see. And that's only going to make people in Oxford hate him even more. Shout out, by the way, to the woman at the Oxford airport holding the baby among the sea of people that were giving the middle finger and cursing Lane Kiffin as he got on the plane. It just means more. She's the embodiment of it just means more in the SEC. You will take your newborn child to an airport so you can curse a coach on their way out as they leave you for a divisional rival. That doesn't happen anywhere else. SEC, baby. And that kid, years from now, is going to be told, hey, you were there. There's the picture of you as I'm flipping off Lane Kiffin as he gets on the plane. You were there. And that's going to be a fun fact that he's going to be able to share with all of his friends. It truly just means more. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour. It is the halftime show. Tyler Ed along with you here on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head along with you here, Captain Dave, here on your Tuesday on the game. I won't be here tomorrow, early signing day. They'll have you covered with all that. I'll be back in here on Thursday and Friday, and we'll dive a little bit more deeper into conference championship weekend here. But the matchups are obviously known based on the results of what happened this past weekend, and we joked about it a little bit yesterday that through everything that happened in the SEC this year, all the ups and downs and twists and turns and all that kind of stuff, where it looked like things may end up with an A&M or an Ole Miss or whoever playing for the conference championship. We get the 5th edition of Georgia and Alabama playing for the conference title coming up in Atlanta on Saturday at 4, which you can watch on ABC. And I mean, for Georgia, they're already in. Right, they're number 4, probably gonna be number 3 in tonight's college football playoff rankings. Getting a chance to avenge their one loss, but like they're gonna be in the playoff. And to the fact, I think they're probably at worst gonna be hosting a first-round playoff game. Right, that if they were to drop by losing Alabama, I don't think they're gonna fall super duper far. So that game, what does it mean to them? We can debate that more as the week goes along, but I do think it's an interesting conversation. And Alabama, who like right now is in, they're on the cut line essentially. They're above the cut line, but on it nonetheless. And the committee said, hey, we don't really punish teams. Or that's what their president said last year. We don't really punish teams for playing an extra game. So theoretically, Alabama shouldn't fall even if they lose to Georgia, because again, you have a 1-1 split with them on the season. So we'll see. So that kind of seems like both teams are going to be in. Same like Penn State or Ohio State and Indiana. Duh. I mean, heck, the loser of the Big Ten championship game should still be a top 4 seed, right? Like, and honestly, if Ohio State beats Indiana, Indiana may not even drop from 2, and if Indiana beats Ohio State, they may just flip, right? Where Indiana becomes number 1. How crazy would that be? That Indiana is the number 1 seed going into the playoff. That's something you wouldn't have believed 2 years ago, let alone, 5-10 years ago. I don't think the loser of Indiana or Ohio State even falls out of the top 4. So they're really, I don't know, fighting for geographical preference, I guess. I'm assuming the number 1 seed, assuming it's one of those two, would go to the Rose Bowl. That kind of seems to be the mark for the highest rated Big Ten team, like Oregon last year. Now, again, they're closer to the West Coast than what you have in the Midwest, but that's obviously an important bowl game to the Big Ten, where I'm assuming the winner is going to choose to go there. I can't even look up what the other quarterfinal games would be, but I'm assuming they're fighting for the right, essentially, go to the Rose Bowl. Big 12, like Texas Tech is safely in my opinion. They've already got the win over BYU in their regular season matchup. BYU is on the outside looking in, and this is where things get interesting, right? Because if BYU wins, 1, they get their lick back on Texas Tech, but 2, they automatically have to be in by virtue of being a ranked conference champion. But Texas Tech is also already in. They've only got 1 loss. Again, I don't think they drop out by losing to BYU, based on the committee precedent so far. That could be a real wrench in the plans in terms of like the SEC getting a certain amount of teams in, or Miami or teams like that. BYU's got the ability to really cause some chaos here, in addition to Duke. Because if you hadn't checked, Duke at 7-5 is indeed playing for the ACC championship, and they hold the keys to making this really chaotic if they're able to win the conference championship, because I don't think they're going to get in the playoff. They're not ranked. I don't expect them to be ranked coming up tonight on the Rankings Reveal show, where the ACC is looking like a one-bid league, and we thought, all right, it's going to be like Georgia Tech and SMU or Georgia Tech and Virginia, and they're ranked, and winner gets in. No. Duke wins. Then we open up the portal of possibility that maybe a James Madison gets in. We have 2 G5 representatives. How crazy would that be? But you know what? Sport of college football right now. It's so chaotic, and these leagues are so big to where Duke hardly had to play anybody in terms of like the top of the top in the league, at least for games that counted, right? They played the game, I think that NC State game was the one that didn't count against their conference resume. They did play and lose to Virginia in the first matchup they had. They played Georgia Tech, lost that. but everything else was pretty meh. Won most of those games, or won all those games, with the exception of Georgia Tech and Virginia. And now they're in the conference championship. And even winning, I don't think gets them in the playoff. If anything, I think it excludes the ACC. I don't think we ever foresaw a possibility that a Power 4 conference champion could be left out completely of the 12-team playoff. And, the ACC was the first conference to get a Power 4 undefeated champion left out with Florida State 2 years ago. And they could be the first Power 4 conference to have a champion just outright get left out of the playoff in the 12-team era. So all that's going to be going on this weekend. We'll get into what the playoff rankings may look like coming up a little bit later on in the show as well. But hour number three, we'll get back into what Coach Beamer's had to say and really assessing the season as a whole for South Carolina as we try and make sense of how we ended up in the situation of being 4-8 at South Carolina. It's all coming up in hour number 3 of the Halftime Show here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. Hour number 3. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Tuesday on the game as we navigate our way through this week and really as we ultimately get into the offseason, because that's where we're at as of right now when it comes to South Carolina coming off the heels of another loss, this time 28-14 to Clemson. And now we move on to everything else that this team has to do ultimately in the offseason to try and figure things out. Are we good now? Can we hear me now, Dave? Good. Okay. Anyways, as I was saying, if you didn't hear me there, coming back in, a lot of things to figure out for South Carolina as we put a bow on a disappointing year, a frustrating year. No two ways about it. To the point where Dave had to go to therapy, right? We said you used 8 therapy trips for the 8 losses they had this year, and I don't know what, maybe like 3 for Clemson specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where look what this team did to Dave. He deserves better than that, Dave. I hope next year's team doesn't send you to therapy as much.
Me too, believe me.
That stuff's expensive, man. It adds up.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, hopefully next year's team treats you a lot better. But unfortunately, just a lot of bad this year. A lot of things that didn't go your way, and not being able to close it out at the end of so many games. Again, I keep going back to Saturday was the perfect microcosm for what this season's been, because despite how things didn't go well in a lot of aspects of the game on Saturday, there you are with 3.5 minutes left on your own 5-yard line. All you got to do is drive it 95 yards, score a touchdown, and win the game. Now, yes, that's easier said than done. No guarantees there, but you didn't even get a chance to try, really, because the first pass you throw gets tipped up in the air off of Harbor, and it gets taken in for a touchdown, and, well, that's all she wrote. And, again, that place cleared out faster than I've ever seen at Williams-Brice so far. And I give credit, a lot of credit, to the fans, because y'all showed up. That you couldn't have convinced anybody that was a game between a team with 4 wins and a team with 6 wins on the final Saturday of the college football regular season. That was a good crowd. That was a crowd that cared. That was a crowd that wanted to see them, well, quite frankly, vanquish their rivals. But they were still invested. Crowd energy seemed to be good throughout the entire game and all that kind of stuff. But when people see that it's over, well, they try and beat the traffic. And that's what happened on Saturday. Traffic actually leaving wasn't terrible. I've seen worse this year. But, just a disappointing end to what's been a disappointing year. And now you face the reality of what 4-8 is, right? And I did this earlier. I kind of went back through the schedule, and it's like, where did we really know that this season was not going well, right? Because you had the first game against Virginia Tech, and in hindsight, your offense did most of nothing through the middle part of that game. You had the opening drive touchdown, you had Harbor's touchdown, but really not much in between. And the Swain punt return obviously helped you build a little bit of a buffer there. And that should have been the warning sign, right? But we came in here on Monday, we were excited about it, fired up, and Harbor had that explosive touchdown, and Sellers running the ball and all these kind of things. We were excited, and rightfully so. But you're not hitting the panic button after game number 1 when you win, right? And we didn't know what Virginia Tech was going to be. Yeah, we knew Brent Pry was on the hot seat coming into the year, but like any program, you expect, hey, maybe they just got better in the portal in the offseason, and maybe they'll be a solid team in the ACC. Hindsight being 2020, of course, they would fire Brent Pry, a couple weeks later, and now James Franklin going to take over in 2026. Okay, well, that's not where the panic button started. SC State, a game where your offense looked terrible, right? You couldn't get a first down to save your life until Vakari Swain broke it open with not 1 but 2 punt return touchdowns. You had a defensive score in there as well. And some of us said, it was a late game, the weather was weird, blah, blah, blah. That should have really been a time where we said, oh, hey, this ain't looking good. And and it's not everybody, but there's some people out there that said, hey, I don't know if this Shula guy is the right fit for OC based on what we've seen through 2 games so far. But you still won the games, right? At the end of the day, it's the most important thing, and maybe this team will hit its stride as the season goes along. go to Vanderbilt, or Vanderbilt comes in here at least, and you lose the Lenore Sellers driving down the field late, or when you have the ball with 2 minutes to go before halftime in a game that you had moved the ball. Remember, you scored the touchdown, and then you had the interception where the defensive lineman or the nose tackle dropped into coverage, but you were driving to score at that point in time. So the offense was able to move the ball a little bit, and they moved it a little bit with Doty too. But you could say, okay, well, you didn't have Sellers. Okay, fine. Still not panicking yet. Missouri defensively was the worry in that game because you couldn't make a tackle to save your life. Ahmad Hardy with Jamal Roberts ran all over you. But even still then, you had the ball with an opportunity to win the game late. You had a lead in the fourth quarter for crying out loud, and you couldn't get it done. Now you're 2-2. Okay, not great. But then you rebound. You beat Kentucky, beat them pretty soundly, and that was maybe the most complete game you played out at the side of Coastal on the entire year, and you won that. And it's like, okay, going into bye week, things aren't great, not perfect. We'll regroup, 3-2, goals still ahead of you and all that kind of stuff. And then it just kind of came off from there. You couldn't get into LSU's red zone the entire night. You looked awful offensively against Oklahoma, which is where the Fire Shula chance came and all that kind of stuff. And that's where the Shula stuff really came to a head, right? And that's the moment where Jack Veltri asked Beamer, hey, you made a staff change last week with Lonnie Teasley. You're going to do it again? I already made a change last week, Jack. Or are you thinking about other changes, whatever, or however you phrased it, right? And that's where Beamer also, I think, lost a lot of the fan base this year with that exchange back and forth with Jack. But that's where things really went off the rails. Again, there were signs through those first handful of games. The Shula offense was not going well. But that's where it really came to a head of like, all right, this guy ain't it. Maybe we need to move on from him. And a couple weeks later, obviously, that did end up being the case after the Ole Miss game. And in a year where, again, maybe playoffs was too lofty of expectations. Maybe we all bought into the hype too much. But, like, you should have at least made a bowl game, right? There is no world. I don't care what talent you lose. There's no world where you should go from winning 9 games to 4 games in college football and it be remotely close to being accepted, because it's not, and it hasn't been here. You should have at least been, at worst, 7-5, maybe 6-6. And again, it goes back to Beamer's point of being close. Yeah, you were close. You were in a lot of those games at the end. Again, mentioned Missouri, had your opportunity. Alabama had a lead, had them on the ropes, couldn't capitalize. A&M, you had a 4-touchdown lead, couldn't capitalize. And then Clemson had the ball, chance to win late, and couldn't capitalize. And the frustrating part that drives people nuts with hearing from Beamer over and over again, we're so close, we're so close, we're so close. Well, yeah, but you were there last year. Last year, you were closing out games. Last year, when you had to go down and make a last-minute drive to beat Missouri, you did it. Last year, when you needed a touchdown to beat Clemson late, you did it. And you got to stop after that by picking off Kay Klubnik. You were closing out games last year, and you're not this year. You took a step back in that regard. So, theoretically, he's not wrong because they were in these games. They were close. They were tight. But you got to figure out what went wrong to where you went from closing games out a year ago to not being able to close games out this season. And I don't know if it's an obvious thing. When you have a 4-8 season, nothing is off the table for examinations and changes to be made. And again, it could be staff. It could be personnel on the field. It could be your off-season workouts and conditioning. That has an effect, right? Well, if you're running out of gas late in the games, well, maybe it's your conditioning. Maybe you're not as in shape as you needed to be able to close these games out, to play your best football when it really matters in the fourth quarter. Nothing's off the table. Everything is worth examining. A couple years ago, remember, they re-examined some of the strength and conditioning, this stuff that they were doing in terms of, like, the guys getting injured, because 2023 was riddled with injuries and was a main reason in many people's eyes why the team didn't achieve what they wanted to achieve that year and missed a bowl game. Okay, well, you went out there, you made the changes to your strength and conditioning to help the team be healthier, and past 2 years you have been. And that's the thing, too. You can't explain away the problems with injuries, and injuries become a crutch to some degree for a lot of fan bases. If you had this guy, that guy, okay, You're supposed to have enough talent where if you lose a guy, you could potentially you replace him with somebody that maybe is not to the same level, but not far off, where you can still be successful. And Carolina was able to do that 2 years ago. But you haven't had that this year. You lost Casey Henry halfway through the year. Okay, fine. But I don't think anybody looked at what happened at right tackle and said, oh, there's this steep drop-off from Casey Henry to Treat or Shed or whoever's playing out there at that right tackle spot. So you don't have that excuse for injury. So what is it? What component of your training, your practice, your scheme, whatever it may be, is causing you to lose these games? Because ideally, you hope you're in these games once again next year. Because you're going to play Alabama. You're going to play Georgia. You're going to play A&M, Tennessee, Oklahoma, all these teams that, if not in the playoffs, at least ranked in the top 25 as of right now, and probably will be just as good, if not better, next year. So what changes do you need to make where you can be competitive in these games? Because next year, I don't care if you're losing the games by 1 point, 3.7 points. If you're not closing the deal in these games for the second year in a row, you're not showing progress. You're not showing you're getting better. You're once again showing you've stepped back. And that excuse will not be bought then either. It's like, guys, we're close. Well, yeah, but you were there 2 years ago, and now you're not. And we need to examine why that is and make the appropriate changes needed to ensure that this program gets back to being where it wants to be. Again, we got a whole offseason to talk about this. We got coaching hires to make. We got recruits to sign tomorrow. We've got a portal to work through coming up here a month from now. A lot of pieces to be put in place for 2026 and what's going to be a pivotal year for Coach Beamer. So we'll talk plenty about that as this offseason rolls along. Note tonight, men's basketball in action, taking on Virginia Tech in the SEC ACC Challenge over at Colonial Life Arena. We gave away some tickets earlier on today, so shout out to those of you that won and hopefully get to go see a victory, a needed victory, right? Coach Parris's crew has, beaten the teams they're supposed to beat, including getting past a Charleston Southern team that put a pretty good scare into them the other week or on Black Friday over at Colonial Life Arena. This is your chance to get a quality win under your belt, right? This is a Virginia Tech team that's 74th and 79th in KenPom. You're 86, so a team that's comparable to you. Not quite the level of what Butler and Northwestern are, but still a team that's expected to be good to solid in the ACC, and one that you can prove that, hey, we can win these games. And when you know that South Carolina is going to be facing the level of competition that's going to in the SEC, any kind of quality victory, I feel like it's going to go a long way. Now, I think the biggest question for this team is how effective you can be with your offense, because we knew shooting threes was going to be a big part of the game plan. They came out of the gate red hot. 30 combined threes made between North Carolina A&T and Southern Miss. Your last 3 games, all under 30%, including your season low of 5 made threes this past Friday against Charleston Southern. Now, this is a Virginia Tech team that allows some threes. VCU hit 52% against them a couple weeks ago, or in one of their last games. So the opportunity is there. You can take advantage. How do you match up on the glass? Can you rebound? Can you be physical enough? Because that's where you lost against Butler and Northwestern. Lacking physicality. Can that change this time around? We'll see. But it's going to be much, much needed. Again, that's coming up today. Tip-off at 7 o'clock. Premium coverage starting at 6:30 right here on 107.5 The Game. Tonight as well at 7 o'clock, the College Football Playoff Top 25 rankings reveal. What the heck are they going to do with Texas? We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, along with you on your Tuesday on The Game. Oh, Tyler Head here for our friends over at Pro Swing Columbia. 2 locations, one out at Forest Acres and one out in Chapin. It's getting cold. When it's cold outside, well, you don't want to be on the actual golf course. You want to be inside in a climate-controlled environment, and that's what Pro Swing has to offer. You can play in the Golf Zone simulators that allow you to play on courses all over the world, rent by the hour. They have memberships available as well. And while you're there, you can also get a free 30-minute swing evaluation to help you become a better overall golfer too. And hey, holiday season's here. They've got gift cards as well as lessons available too. You can check all that out over at Pro Swing Columbia. Get more information by giving them a call at 803-592-3916 or book online at proswingcolumbia.com. Pro Swing, 2 locations at Forest Acres and out in Chapin. All right. Get my Tilly's thing up here. Tyler Eddie here telling you about our friends over at Tilly's Warehouse, first wine and spirit store in 5 Points in the past 20 years. Locally family owned and operated on Green Street, right behind the Salty Nut Cafe in the old Pavlov's building. Whether it's a fun night in, a weekend ahead, maybe watching games or hanging out with family and friends, Tilly's has got everything you need for whatever the occasion is. G4 Tequila, they've got that. You want things like High Noons, Sun Cruisers, Surfsides, Cutwaters, they've got all those too. Buy the case in individual cans, ready to drink by the register on your way out. Whatever you need, Tilly's has got you covered. Mention that you heard this ad on 107.5 The Game. You can get 10% off any wine selection as well. Stay connected with them on Instagram and Facebook or visit their website at tillyswarehouse.com for more information. Tilly's Warehouse, your new must-visit spot over in 5 Points. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Egg and Captain Dave on your Tuesday here on the game. And mentioned men's basketball in action tonight, 7 o'clock, and pregame coverage starting at 6:30 right here on 107.5 Game. While they're tipping off, will also be the latest reveal of the College Football Playoff Top 25, as always, on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock on ESPN, as we'll find out the penultimate rankings, setting the table for Conference Championship Weekend on who's in and who's going to be out for Selection Sunday coming up at noon when they announce the second edition of the 12-team college football playoff field. And, well, they've got a little bit of a conundrum on their hands, more so than even what they had a year ago. And it's burnt orange, and its name is Texas. Because Texas, by virtue of taking down, at the time, number 3, Texas A&M on Black Friday, they created an interesting scenario in terms of how's the committee going to view that Texas resume and what's important to them and how that can affect college football going forward. Let's hear from the head coach himself, Steve Sarkisian, and what he had to say following their win against their rival out there in Austin on Friday night.
What kind of statement do you think that made to the committee?
Well, I think this. If you really look at the body of work and you look at the Southeastern Conference and what we have to go through every week, you look at the non-conference schedule we play to go to Ohio State in week 1 and lose by 7 when we outgained them by nearly 200 yards. We got a really good football team, and it would be a disservice to our sport if this team's not a playoff team when we went and scheduled that non-conference game. Because if we're a 10-2 team, it's not a question. But we were willing to go play that game. So is that what college football is about? Don't play anybody and just have a good record, or play the best and put the best teams in the playoff, and we're one of the best teams.
This is the situation that the committee was trying to avoid, right? And when the committee laid out their parameters for this year, where they said they're going to put more emphasis on who you beat when you beat them, the quality of your opponent, all those kind of things are going to be baked into their new metrics, then that made the SEC feel comfortable about going out and adding a 9th game to their conference schedule going forward, because it says, okay, the committee does not seem like they're going to penalize you for losing more games if you're playing tougher competition. That enters where Texas comes into the fold here, because he's right. They played the number 1 team in the country, Ohio State, in week number 1, closer than anybody's played them. They held them to the lowest point total and had the closest margin of loss of any team Ohio State's played this year with 7. Now, they also lost to Florida. So that's kind of the big hang up here is like, yeah, you played Ohio State close, but you also lost to a Florida team that's not going bowling, had to fire their head coach. What's the balance? But think about this. If, as he said, instead of scheduling Ohio State, if Texas went out and scheduled Purdue, one of the bottom feeders of the Big Ten, beat them 52-3, and we're 10-2, they're in no question, right? Especially with the win over Texas A&M. But the Florida thing really clouds this. And the point he's making in that little clip we played there is if you tell Texas they're not in, because, again, they don't have an extra data point. They don't play this weekend. They don't have another opportunity to prove themselves to the committee. And as we learned last year with Carolina, when you don't play on conference championship weekend, your opportunity to move up isn't likely not going to happen outside of somebody above you just getting obliterated in the conference championship game. So tonight really tells you whether or not Texas will be in the college football playoff or not. And that line is 10, right? Because of the ACC and the G5 not having a team ranked inside the top 12. The line for an at-large, which is what Texas would have to be, is 10, where Alabama's in right now. Can they theoretically jump all the way from 16th up to 10th? I don't think they will, because I don't think you've had enough chaos in front of you that's going to allow you to vault over Alabama, to vault over Notre Dame, to vault over even a BYU. I don't think it's going to happen. But that does send a message to people saying, all right, maybe we don't schedule these tougher games in the non-conference slate by fear of making our record look worse than it is. In fact, today, we had the news come out of Tuscaloosa that Alabama, who had previously scheduled a home game against South Florida, Alex Golish's team that's been doing pretty well in the G5, they bumped that down the road to 2032. They've now filled that spot in 2026 with UT Chattanooga, an FCS team, and Marshall in 2027. So there's no emphasis for them to go out and schedule these big out-of-conference games. And, because, again, you still have to have the parameter of you got to go out and schedule a Power 4 non-conference opponent if you don't already have one built in, like, South Carolina and Georgia and Florida and all, and Tech and Kentucky and all of them do. But instead of Alabama go out there and scheduling an Ohio State, scheduling a Michigan, scheduling a Texas Tech, they'll go play, again, Purdue. They'll go play Rutgers. They'll go play Oklahoma State. it's fulfilling the obligation. Those are Power 4 schools, but at the bottom end, which gives you a better opportunity to win, to make your resume look better from a win-loss standpoint. If that's what the committee's going to value, that's kind of this dangerous precedent. This is going to be the biggest controversy we've ever seen, because here's the thing, at least in the 12-team era, Texas is going to jump over Michigan because Michigan lost. They'll jump over Vanderbilt. They beat Vanderbilt head-to-head. They'll probably jump over Utah because they did beat the number 3 team in the country. Maybe Miami because they beat, Miami beat Notre Dame and should maybe be ranked ahead of them, but they're not. But I don't see them climbing all the way to 10, right? Because A&M's the only team in the top 10 that lost. A&M's going to still be in. They'll drop to, I don't know, like maybe 6 or 7 or something like that, or maybe even 5. But they're not dropping out. Nobody's dropping out of the top 10 with tonight's rankings. I don't see it. Now, will they be ahead of BYU? Well, maybe. But I don't see them vaulting all the way from 16th up to 10th and putting themselves in, especially considering the fact that Alabama, who's playing for the conference championship, has one less loss than them. They also have a comparable bad loss to Florida State, but still one less loss. And they themselves have a really good win against Georgia. So what the committee does tonight, I don't know. I don't expect them to put Texas in, but there will be a firestorm if they don't. And it's going to create a whole new narrative on what's important to the committee, how you should do your schedule, and all those kind of things that just, I don't know. It's just what college football is these days. But Indiana, Ohio State, they'll stay 1 and 2 because duh. Georgia will be 3. Texas Tech will be 4. Oregon probably will be 5. Maybe you put A&M at 6, maybe 7. Ole Miss after that at theoretically 8th. Ole Miss at number 7. Oklahoma at 8. Notre Dame at 9. Alabama at 10. Again, all those will stay the same because all those teams have won. Like, I don't see the pathway for Texas to get in. And again, they don't have an extra game. They will not play for the SEC championship game to add an extra data point to what they've done this year. They have to solely rest on their 12 games, which, again, does include one of the better wins against number 3 A&M, but includes a pretty bad loss against Florida. And I'm interested to see how the committee views this because it does set the table for this weekend. Where, again, if the committee backs up their word, teams that lose conference championship games that are in won't be penalized for it because it's an extra game you earn the right to be in. So even if Alabama lost to Georgia, who they did beat earlier on this year, they theoretically wouldn't fall out as the number 10 team and the last team in the at-large spot. Texas can hope for it, but I don't think it's going to happen. But very intrigued to see where Texas does indeed fall in tonight's rankings. And the firestorm that comes away from that, one side or the other, even if Texas gets in, there's going to be controversy there too. But, hey, it's a made-for-TV product. That's what this ranking show is. And, hey, that's why we tune in, and which is what ESPN knows, right? So that's coming up tonight at 7 o'clock. It's been a crazy coaching carousel, really, in the past couple days. Mark Stoops was fired, and Will Stein was hired within like 24 hours in Lexington, Kentucky. Earlier on this morning on the Garnet Trust Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating, myself, Chris Clark, and Jack Veltri spoke with Justin Rowland of Cats Illustrated that detailed everything that went on in Lexington over the course of the past couple days and what the Will Stein era looks like. Because remember, you're playing them every single year. They're an annual opponent. So that Kentucky rivalry will continue. We'll discuss that coming up next. We'll let you hear that conversation as well as the halftime show rolls along. Tyler Ed and Captain Dave on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. It's all right, Captain Dave. Wrap things up on your Tuesday here on the game. Before we get into some more topics to wrap up the hour, especially if you're watching on the live stream, which is always sponsored by our friends over at Shepherd's Glass, you may have seen Bill wasn't feeling well, acting kind of normal a little bit earlier on in the show. He had some stuff going on earlier on today and came in here and wasn't feeling right. So he sat out the back half of the show. He's out there sitting on the couch just outside the studio now, trying to relax and get feeling right. So appreciate you guys that commented and stuff that saw he wasn't looking right and expressed your concern. We of course know Bill's dealing with health stuff with his kidneys, and you unfortunately have days like this where you're not feeling right, and he came in here and tried his best to power through it, and unfortunately just wasn't quite feeling it. So hopefully he's good and ready to go tomorrow. But he is okay. He's out there resting and trying to get things right for himself today. But again, appreciate everybody that reached out and saw that and were concerned. Just went out there a few minutes ago to check on him and make sure everything's looking okay. And again, just not having a good day, which those kind of things happen when you're dealing with health issues. And I think we can all certainly understand that. Tomorrow is it's not National Signing Day. It's Early Signing Day. Do we still need to call it Early Signing Day? It's National Signing Day at this point. I know you still have the February date that nobody pays attention to anymore. It's really funny. When I was a kid coming up, and even as I got into doing sports media myself, like the February signing day was like, quite frankly, a national holiday. And I remember ESPNU used to have like 12 hours of coverage, right? From, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or whatever. And, they had coaches on and they were breaking down the classes, and you would have the big 5 stars announcing where they're going with hat ceremonies and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of gone away, right? Now you do sign the majority of your class on December, Early Signing Day, which it's moved around that date even in and of itself a little bit. I don't know. I guess considering the fact that it's like in the middle of everything else going on, you still got conference championships this weekend, it doesn't quite stand alone on its own, right? Because at least with the old signing day, you were roughly a month removed from the national championship. You were a couple days away from the Super Bowl. Like, it could stand on its own a little bit to where I get more of a central focus. But now, like tonight, you're going to have the college football playoff rankings come out. This weekend, you have conference championships. We're talking about who's going to be in, who's going to be out for the, for the 12-team college football playoff. And I don't know, signing day doesn't quite have the same shine that it once did. But nevertheless, still a very important day when it comes to roster building. And we played the clip a little bit earlier where Beamer said, hey, it's one of the first priorities of the offseason. Got to go out there and sign your class. And Carolina is tracking to have a pretty solid class once again. Just looking at the current On3 rankings, they had them ranked 19th overall. Now it's currently 9th in the SEC, which, hey, that's kind of the nature of the beast. You can have a class that's, top 20, but you're still in the back half of the SEC, considering all the schools that you're going up against. But a lot of good talent that, I defer to Wes and Chris from Gamecock Central on this because they didn't know these kids. They see them at camp. They see them at their high school games. They know more about these guys than a lot of us do because they have those relationships before they ever get on campus. But a lot of guys to be excited about. Obviously, Darius Gray, the headliner of the class, Jazavian Currents, the safety out of Rock Hill that's created a lot of buzz. Obviously, Landon Duckworth, anytime you sign a quarterback, that's going to end up being a really big deal as well. And hopefully all these guys stay committed and sign on the dotted line. We discussed this earlier. I don't think there's a letter of intent anymore. I think that's gone away. But whatever the paperwork is that commits you to being a South Carolina Gamecock for 2026 and hopefully beyond is going to go down without too much issue tomorrow. There are some flip candidates. Keep your eye on as well. Bill brought it up earlier. You had Carson Baker, who was the former Florida commit, the 4-star running back out of Georgia that decommitted the other day, that has South Carolina in his mix of teams that he's still considering. Again, you have a running back room that's about to lose Rasul Faison. It's going to lose Oscar Attaway. We should hopefully have Matthew Fuller and Rasul and Joe Warren Howell coming back. We'll see what he do with Isaiah Augusta. I think he's got eligibility left. But signing a 4-star back in Carson Baker would probably be a welcome addition to this. And, reading the reports from Gamecock Central, it does seem like there's some momentum. This is per Wes Mitchell, that Carson Baker could flip Carolina. We'll have to wait and see. It's not a guarantee, but there is some smoke there that could certainly be a possibility. And that's what makes signing day so fun, right? Is flipping guys at the last minute. And that was always the fun part about the February signing day when, again, it got a little more attention because it kind of stood on its own of like, oh, man, this 5-star is going to flip to this school. And again, we saw Jared Curtis flip from Georgia to Vanderbilt officially, I guess, earlier on today. Now, I guess there's some dispute on if he's actually done it or not, but it's been tracking that way. Steve Wiltfong put out a Fong bomb about a week or so ago that said this was going to happen, and all signs seem to indicate that is indeed going to be the case. And I don't know, maybe we're in for a wild early signing day coming up tomorrow because everything else in college football is wild. Why not? Why not a wild early signing day? I won't be here tomorrow, but the crew, Wes, Chris, Jack, and Terry will have you covered from 9 to noon tomorrow. Bill will be in here discussing things from 12 to 3. And I believe, if I looked correctly on YouTube, it appears that Coach Beamer will speak tomorrow at 2 o'clock to wrap up signing day and obviously also talk about the OC hire and all those other kind of things going on right now, the portal, staff changes, all those things as you wrap up the 4-8 season. But that'll be tomorrow afternoon when he kind of wraps everything up for early signing day. And, I'll talk to you guys on Thursday. So, again, appreciate everybody checking in on Bill. I believe he's okay. And hopefully he'll be back in here good and ready to go coming up tomorrow. So that'll do it for the halftime show. Tyler Head and Captain Dave coming up next, post-game show with Jay and Terry on your Tuesday on the Game.